You are watching Pulse America News, and I am Quindy. Before we get into today's report, I want you to stop for just one moment, because what is happening right now, at this very hour, is not just a news story. It is a turning point in history, the kind of moment that people decades from now will look back on and ask, where were you when the world changed? This is that moment. And you need to know exactly what is unfolding. Overnight, a missile slammed into a populated city, not a military base, not an empty field. A city of more than 25,000 ordinary people, families, children, elderly men and women, all of them asleep in their homes when the sky cracked open and the ground shook beneath them. The city of Arad was hit. More than 100 people were wounded in a single strike. Buildings that people called home just hours before were reduced to dust and rubble. An impact crater now sits at the heart of that city, a scar that no family living near it will ever forget. And as rescue teams rushed in, as the dust still hung heavy in the air, the sirens did not stop. Because the missiles kept coming. This is the reality on the ground right now. This is not a simulation. This is not a war game. This is a live, active, and intensifying conflict between Iran on one side and the United States and Israel on the other. And it is entering its fourth week with no signs of slowing down. If anything, it is accelerating. Let me walk you through everything, because every piece of this story connects to the next, and if you only follow one part of it, you will miss the bigger picture. The Israeli leadership arrived at the scene in Arad to personally survey the destruction, walking through the debris, meeting survivors, and sending a very deliberate message to the world. We are here, we are standing, and we are not backing down. When asked directly about the next steps in this campaign, the response was careful but unmistakable. Whatever happens next, it happens in coordination. The alliance between the United States and Israel is not just a diplomatic relationship right now. It is an active, real-time military partnership being tested under fire, literally. And speaking of the United States, here is where things escalate even further. A direct ultimatum was issued. The message was clear. If, within 48 hours, the Strait of Hormuz is not opened, strikes would be ordered against power infrastructure inside Iran. That is not a vague warning. That is a countdown. And that countdown is running right now as you watch this. The Strait of Hormuz. Let's take a moment to understand why that single waterway matters so much. Nearly 20% of the entire world's oil supply passes through it. If it closes, even for a few days, the impact is felt in every country on Earth. Fuel prices spike. Supply chains collapse. Industries grind to a halt. It is not just a military choke point. It is the economic jugular of the global energy system. And right now, it is being held hostage by the ongoing conflict. Israel, in response to the weekend's escalation, went after the storage sites linked to Iran's ballistic missile program. Explosions were captured on video, large, powerful blasts lighting up the night sky over Iranian territory. That alone would have been considered a massive development in any other week, but this week it was just one chapter in a much larger and more dangerous story. Because then came the strike on a base in the Indian Ocean. And this is the part of the story that should make every person in Europe sit up and pay close attention. This base, a major joint installation used by both American and British forces, sits more than 4,000 kilometers away from Iranian soil. That is more than 2,000 miles. And Iran fired ballistic missiles at it anyway. 2 missiles were launched. One fell short. The other was intercepted by a naval warship deployed in the area. But here's what that tells us, and this is the part that cannot be overlooked. If Iran can target a military installation 4,000 kilometers away, then the cities of Europe are not out of reach. Berlin, Paris, Rome, Oslo, London. These are not just place names on a map anymore in this conversation. Military analysts are now openly discussing whether European capitals fall within the potential strike radius of Iran's most advanced medium-range ballistic missiles. And the answer based on the distances involved, is that it is now a realistic concern. The uncomfortable truth is that most countries in Europe do not have the kind of layered air defense systems that can reliably intercept modern ballistic missiles. Even with advanced multi-tier air defense technology, the kind that combines lower altitude intercepts with higher altitude kill capabilities, missiles are still getting through and hitting civilian areas. That is happening in a country with some of the most sophisticated missile defense in the world. Now imagine what happens in a country that does not have that same infrastructure in place. This is why the call went out directly. Nations need to get involved, not on the sidelines, not with statements of concern, actually involved. Because what Iran demonstrated over the weekend was not just a regional threat, it was a global one. And yet Iran keeps firing, even at Gulf countries that have not taken direct military action against Tehran. That is the part that surprised even the most seasoned observers. Countries that were not actively participating in strikes against Iran were still being targeted. Their energy infrastructure, desalination plants, oil fields, liquefied natural gas facilities was hit. Qatar, which holds the title of the world's largest producer of liquefied natural gas, saw its energy infrastructure come under attack. Think about what that means for the global energy market. Think about what it means for countries that depend on that fuel. And think about the message Iran is sending that no one is off limits. Not your ally. Not your neutral neighbor. Not your trading partner. If Iran decides to target you, geography and neutrality offer no protection. Now, why is Iran doing this? Why target countries that are not even fighting against it? The analysis coming from those closest to this situation is that it is deeply counterproductive from a strategic standpoint. Targeting neutral Gulf countries risks pulling a much broader regional coalition into the fight against Iran. It risks isolating Tehran completely. It risks accelerating the very military response it is supposedly trying to deter. And yet, Iran is doing it anyway. That irrationality, that willingness to escalate beyond what makes strategic sense, is perhaps the most alarming part of all of this. Because unpredictable actors in possession of precision-guided ballistic missiles, cluster munitions, and the demonstrated will to use them against civilian populations, that is one of the most dangerous combinations imaginable in modern warfare. And the missiles are not crude weapons. These are medium-range ballistic missiles. They are precise. They are fast. And Iran has demonstrated over the last several weeks that it can fire them repeatedly at targets of its choosing, at a time of its choosing. Reports from senior military officials indicate that this incoming missile fire is expected to continue for at least several more weeks. That means more nights of alarm sirens, more scrambles into bomb shelters, more moments where ordinary people lie in the dark wondering if the next impact will be close to them. In the early hours of this morning, alerts went out across Israeli cities. People grabbed their children. They ran for shelter. Minutes later, another alert. Then another. This is not something that happens once and then stops. This is a sustained, grinding campaign designed to break civilian morale. And so far, it is not working. But the toll is real and the pressure is immense. What is also real is the coordination now developing between the United States, Israel, and the Gulf states. Something is happening diplomatically that has not happened before. Countries in the Gulf that historically operated independently and sometimes competed with one another are now aligning because they share a common threat. The Iranian regime has, through its own actions, done something that years of American diplomacy could never fully achieve. It has united its neighbors against it. There is something almost historic about that. A country so aggressive, so willing to attack even those who stayed neutral, that it has driven its own region into a coalition against it. And at the center of all of this is the 48-hour ultimatum. That clock. That countdown that is ticking as you watch this report. If the Strait of Hormuz is not opened, if the pressure does not ease, then the next phase of this conflict involves direct strikes on power infrastructure inside Iran itself. That would be a massive escalation. It would move this war into a new phase, one with potentially enormous consequences for the Iranian civilian population and for the stability of the entire Middle East. This is Pulse America News. I am Kundi, and I want to be completely honest with you. We do not know exactly how this ends. No one does. But what we do know is that we are watching a conflict that started with regional tensions and has now expanded to the Indian Ocean, threatened European capitals, disrupted global energy markets, and put hundreds of thousands of civilians under active missile attack. Every development matters. Every hour matters. Stay with Pulse America News, because this story is not slowing down, and neither are we.